salawat to invite him. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sallallahu alayka ya Rasulullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Ahl Baytika al-Madlumin. Ya Gharib ya Madlum. Ya Gharib ya Madlum Karbala. Ya laytana kunna ma'akum. Salawat. Respected members of the community, dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we've entered the ninth night of Muharram. As we began these nights, I told you to think of things you want to change. And I hope you really did that, because otherwise if you're not changing these nights, you're leaving these nights going to waste. So for those who didn't, I ask you to do it now. You're still not too late. Because the best gift we can give to Imam Hassan alayhi salam is to uphold the values which he sacrificed his life for. And if anything we take away from these majalis is things that we can change. This is what we'll take away from these majalises. We have to ask ourselves how these last couple of days I've been telling you stories of the prophets, of the imams, of their companions. How close are we to these people in our faith, in our lives? Are we very far away? Have you measured how close you are to these people? To the personality that is Imam Hussain alayhi salam, to the personality that is Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, to the companions, Habib and Mudahir. Have you tried to imagine where you are in this life compared to where they are? We have to try to understand what their vision was, what their principles in life were, and implement them in our lives. You know, it said when Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, his arm was cut off, he says, "By God, if you cut off my right hand, I will guard my religion and stay steadfast to the principles of my values and the religion." This is what they sacrificed their life for. And even in their last moments, this is what they stood for. So we must ask ourselves, what is our worldview? How do we see this life? How do we see the world? Do we look into the society of today? Do we base our principles and morals on the society that we live in? Or do we have principles that we stand for? What is our vision? You know, for example, those who wear glasses, if you wear the wrong prescription, you'll see a blurry vision, right? You won't see the correct thing. The same way, we have to have the correct vision in life. If we're following the wrong path and the wrong principles, we will never be on the right path. We have to put on the lenses of a Shia, of the Imams. See life as a Shia would see it. See life as the companions would see it. We have to learn how to live in that way. This is why we mention these stories. This is why we talk about these majalises. So we can change. We need to have Islah. We can't leave this majalis without understanding what it is that these people and the Imams and the companions sacrificed their entire lives for. So we have to put on those glasses, put on the lens of a Shia, put on the lens of the companions of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and try to understand life. Because we can't just go through society, but how society, live through life is how society wants us to live, or how the world wants us to live. We have principles. Those who stand for nothing will fall for everything. It's a very famous saying. So we must ask ourselves, number one step is how do we see ourselves? Do we see ourselves as people who are capable of change? Or do we have a negative opinion in ourselves? That is very, very important. Because sometimes we always look at ourselves and say, how can we ever become like this person? This was a companion of the Imam. But sometimes we feel weak, sometimes we feel like we can't change, sometimes we feel like we're struggling. Who are we to become these people? You know, Imam Ali Islam, he addresses this. He says, those who feel weak, do not feel like you're weak. For indeed inside of you is the greater universe. You have unlimited potential inside of you. Do not ever feel like you're weak. Do not ever feel that you are not capable of change. Like I told you the story the other day, it took one verse to change Fidel, who became from a robber to a great scholar of Islam. Everything can be changed. You just have to have the willpower and the mindset. Your potential is limitless. Often we have this mindset that tells us we can never achieve these levels, right? But Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam has told us, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, that though I wish I could be here. Once he was crying and people came to him and he said, why are you crying? He says, I'm talking about the people of my ummah, of my grandsons, of my al-Qa'im. But I wish I could be there. Because those people have the greatest reward. So we have this opportunity, golden opportunity Allah has given us. Take full advantage of it. Take advantage of these blessings. Make the intention to change. Have the intention. Imam alayhi salam has said that those who make an intention to achieve something, even if they don't achieve it, they'll get closer as possible. Aspire for the best, and even if you don't get to become what you want to ascend, you will at least get close to it. This is what the Imam tells us. Aim really high. Aim to become like the companions, as best as you can in this life. Intention is very powerful. It has a way to manifest itself. For those who know Jim Carrey, this is actually a very famous story. Not that I support him or anything, I don't know his lifestyle, but I'm just going to mention the story because it's very important. It has to do with intention. Once Jim Carrey, in 1985, he's a very famous actor, he wrote himself a $10 million check. At that time, he was broke and he had no movie gigs. And he wrote the check to himself and he says, for movie services rendered, for acting services rendered. 10 years later, he started his first movie. And guess the amount he got paid for that movie? $10 million. He manifested it. He made it happen. Have the willpower. Make things happen. Do not assume yourself to be people who cannot make changes. Just like that, we ourselves can make changes to spirituality. We can say we want to become great people. We want to become like the companions. Write it down. Make goals for yourself. And check yourself every single day with those goals. We have to have basira, we have to have vision. For those, sometimes you may need help from Allah, and that's good. You can ask Allah for help, but sometimes we need it. Those who know Allama Tabatabai, one of the greatest scholars in the last era, who passed away a couple years ago, he wrote Tafsir al-Mizan. Tafsir al-Mizan is one of the greatest Quranic tafsirs and exegesis that we have. So when he first started going to the Hawza, he was taking classes, and he found it very hard. In fact, he repeated some of his classes. He repeated a lot of his classes a couple of times. And at first, he wanted to give up. He was finding it very, very hard. And this is Allama Tabatabai. So he prayed to Allah. He made a 2-rakat prayer that night. And he asked Allah, please, help me in this path. I want to do better. And I find this really hard, but I want to do better. And ever since then, he passed every class and he became Allama Tabatabai. The one who was finding it hard to pass the first basic class of Hausa became the master of tafsir. He wrote Tafsir al-Mizan. And I highly recommend everyone to read this tafsir. It's one of the greatest tafsirs we have right now. But it just shows you, we all are capable of change, no matter what it be, what aspect of life it is. Ask Allah for help if you need so. Ask your Imam for help if you need so. But we have the capability to change. Now, once we understand that how we see ourselves, the next important step is, how do we see life? Rasulullah has a hadith which he narrated from the conversation between Allah and Nabi Musa alayhi salam. So Allah is telling Nabi Musa alayhi salam that I have made 5 things dependent on 5 other things, but people go and seek them in everything else. What is he saying? He's saying, I've made 5 virtues, 5 secrets to life, dependent on these 5 things. But people seek them everywhere else. Now we're going to go through these 5 things right now, one by one, to understand what he's talking about. The first thing he says, I have established honor in my obedience, but people seek it in the houses of kings. But then how will they find honor? A man once came to Imam alayhi salam, and he was very depressed and sad. And so Imam alayhi salam says, what's wrong with you? What's happening? Why do you look like this? He was very sad, he was crying. He says, "Ana fakir, I'm very poor in this life. I'm struggling." So Imam Ali says to him, "Would you sell your faith for any amount of money?" He says, "Never." He says, "Do not dare say you are poor, for you have the greatest iman. Call yourself rich. For those who have iman are the richest in this world." And that's how you measure your true wealth. Your iman is your true wealth. You know, Allah says in the Quran, whoever seeks honor should know that honor entirely belongs to Allah. In Surah 35, verse 10. You know, we look for worldly titles to feel importance, and we give importance to worldly titles, unfortunately, in our communities. As you can see, for example, I'll give you guys an example. Especially for the younger kids, because, you know, a lot of parents have this, you know, issue as well. We give priorities to things and places that should not be given to. For example, I'll give you 2 examples, and I'll make you guys answer this question. There's two students. One graduates, has like 5 PhDs, becomes a doctor, lawyer, engineer, whatever you want to call it, attains a very high position in society, makes a lot of money. Everyone's going to respect them, right? Yes or no? Now we have another kid who graduates college, doesn't become the best. He attains a normal job, average job, makes, you know, good enough money to support his family. Now the first kid, the one who became everything in society, an honored position, all the wealth, houses, cars, everything, doesn't know how to read the Quran. The second kid learns the Quran, studies Islam, focuses on deen. In society, as a parent, most likely, who would you be more proud of? The kid that's showing the world that have cars, houses, education, everything in the world. But yet he doesn't know how to read the Quran. And that's something very true out there. And I've seen this in every society, every community I go to. Where do you place your honor? Where do you give to worldly titles or someone who's closer to God? You can have both. If that guy that has all this stuff and knows how to read the Quran, of course, perfect. But if he doesn't, then don't give him honor in the sense that he's achieved something, but he hasn't achieved anything for Allah's sake. You know, you only achieve titles in this life, what will happen to the Akhirah? You know, true wealth will be measured on the Day of Judgment. And that's your book of deeds. That's how closer you are to Allah. That's your richness. That's your honor. So have this mindset. We have to change this mindset that we have, that sometimes people are important just because of the position they're in, what they're in. Measure honor differently. Measure honor by someone how close they are to Allah, how good of a person they are. Society needs to do this. You know, because if honor, you attach honor to these things, if you lose that position, what happens? The person feels worthless. But if you attach honor to Allah, no matter what happens in life, you're going to walk around the world with a light. Because you have honor in the eyes of Allah, and that's all that matters. You'll never ever feel dishonored. No matter what happens in life, you have Allah. But those who attach it to positions, today you could be the richest guy, tomorrow you could be the poorest guy. Do not attach honor to positions, brothers and sisters. You know, those who did this is how society got like this. You know, Islam, after the death of Rasulullah, he would go around the members and say, "Where are my brothers? Where are those who died in the great wars? Where are those, my companions, those who uphold the Quran, those who stood steadfast in my faith?" He was crying out to the people that where did everyone go? What happened? People gave into the world. People grabbed the caliphate. People seized the world. They lost honor. People started seeking honor from the people in positions instead of Imam Islam. And this is how the problem started. You know, this is why it's very important to understand where to place your honor. The second thing he tells us is, I have established knowledge in being hungry, but they seek it on a full stomach. Then how will they find it? What does this mean? You know, there's a reason we fast. One of the reasons that we fast is jihad al-nafs. We're training our body and our nafs itself to understand, to stay away from struggles in this life, and to stay away from wants that we have, to understand how to control our nafs. You know, being hungry gives a person insight what it means to be a human and have carnal desires. And your nafs can control that. So you're not a slave to your body anymore. So Allah, this is why Allah tells us always, do not eat till you're full, always leave something behind. There's wisdom behind these things that we have. Even many traditions of the Imam has told us as well. Because Imam alayhi salam has a hadith, he says, how good is the helper? How good of a helper is hunger in helping someone control their nafs? Because that's the number one desire that we have as bodies. Our bodies want hunger. If you can control that, you can learn to control your body. This is why we have Ramadan. The number one importance of Ramadan is to control jihad and nafs, to control your entire nafs. Now, the next thing that he says, I've established self-sufficiency in contentment. But people seek it in collecting wealth, then how will they find it? We have in National Balagha, Imam alayhi salam, he describes the meeting when Nabi Musa alayhi salam went to the door of the Pharaoh. He went to the door of the Pharaoh in just, very poor clothing, and he went to this king who was adorned with jewels. And when he went to him, Pharaoh started making fun of him. He said, can I give you some gold coins? Because you look poor. So Imam alayhi salam, he comments on this. He used to comment on many incidents to give us lessons, to understand what's going on. So he says, when Allah has chosen His messengers, He has given them an iron will. But when you look at them from the outside, you may see that they have appearance of people who may be poor. Why? Because they do not attach themselves to this world. But Allah has given His prophets an infinite treasure, which is contentment in this life. To be contented, whatever you have, is the infinite treasure Imam alayhi salam says. In fact, it's the secret, one of the secrets to happiness in this life. For example, we chase wealth, but we're never going to be happy. Elon Musk, everyone knows Elon Musk is. He's one of the richest people in the world. A couple months ago, he reached the status of one of the world's richest people. And people tweeted, oh, he is not the richest person. He tweets on back to work. He's the world's richest person. He's not satisfied. This life will never satisfy us, brothers and sisters. We have to be content with the life we live. The society that we have, it's based on materialism. They spend billions. You know how much they spent in 1 year? 16 billion on advertisements 2 years ago. Just to keep you wanting more and more and more. Why? Because the government benefits at the end of the day. We can't give in to this dunya. Chasing wealth. Nothing's going to satisfy you in this sense. And oftentimes when we chase this world, we forget our religious duties. We chase the wealth, but we don't come to the mosque. We ignore our children, we leave them behind, forget their religious duties. If you're chasing the world and your kids are not becoming Muslim or staying away from Islam, you're failing. If you're chasing the world and you yourself are not coming to the mosque, you're failing. Allah says, oh believers, do not let your wealth nor your children divert you from the remembrance of Allah. For those who do so are the biggest losers in the Day of Judgment. If you have obligations and things which are stopping you from becoming a better Muslim, put your priorities first. Jihad, of course, working for earning a healthy income, of course, it's jihad. It's also jihad as well. Working in the way for your children, providing them. But not at the expense that your kids are losing their religion, or you yourself is losing your religion. You have to live in this life as, of course, you can attain wealth. You can attain everything you want. But Imam alayhi salam says this perfectly. He says, the secret to life in this situation is zuhud. The greatest gift Allah has given to these humans is to be indifferent in this world. He says, Laysa zuhdu anna tamlika shay'in. Zuhud does not mean nothing owns you. And you do not own anything. So he's saying, zuhud does not mean that you do not have wealth, you don't have everything in this life. But zuhud means that nothing owns you. You have to be indifferent to this life. So when time comes to be, and you need to let go of this world, you're not holding on. You have to be detached. Do not let this dunya distract you from remembering Allah. I'll tell you guys a story. This is narrated by one of the Ayatollahs about during the time of the Ghiba. There was a shopkeeper who used to own a soap store. Those herbal stores and stuff? He used to own a soap store. So, two people come up to him and they tell him the Imam has called you. They were companions of the Imam. And he goes like, what, me? Why? Okay, fine. He was excited the Imam called him. But he had soaps. He used to sell soap. So he put his soap on top of the top of his roof of his shop and left. As they were walking, they were crossing a body of river, and the companions were just walking through the river. He said, I can't swim. He said, the companion said, just say Bismillah, the Imam has called you, don't worry, you'll make it through the river. He starts going through the water, and it starts raining. And once it starts raining, he thinks for a second. He's like, oh my God, my soaps that I left behind my store, they're gonna get wet and get ruined. And then he just falls in the water. So he asks the companions what happened. He's like, man, you're going to meet the Imam and you're thinking about soap? Life, this world, do not make it a priority. Because everyone has this soap in their life, this priority that we have in our lives, that stops us from remembering Allah. For that person, he gave up a chance to meet the Imam thinking about soap. But for him, that was important. We may have many things like this in our lives. So understand this, brothers and sisters. Live in a way that you're detached. How do we achieve contentment? You know, Allah said many times in the Quran, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمْ تُكَذِّبَانِ. Which one of the favors of the Lord do you deny? Understand the blessings that you have in this life. List them down sometimes. Think about them. Understand how much Allah has truly given you, then you can be happy with this life. And the last thing is that he says, I have established comfort in the hereafter, but they seek it in this world. Then how will they find it? You know, about 16 million people in America face depression, especially the younger kids. Why do you think that is? They're trying to satisfy themselves with this life. They're trying to, their kids, their friends they look at social media, they see their friends are getting this thing, this new item, their friends are in this place, traveling. They always want more and more. They're not understanding what true contentment really means. They're never going to be happy with this life. For example, when you buy a new car, you're very excited for a couple days. You treat it like your baby. After a couple months, you're like, okay, I want a new car. You buy something else new. You like it for a bit. You forget about it. Life will never satisfy you. Never. Those who try to satisfy themselves with this life will end up depressed. Because your hearts will never be content. Allah says in the Quran, verily with the remembrance of Allah do your hearts find rest. Those who will try to satisfy themselves with this life will always be lost. So always remember this. And the last thing is that I have established my pleasure in opposing their own selfish desires, but they seek it in following their own desires. How often do we give into our own nafs and ignore what Allah has said? Think about it. How often do we do this? This is just a personal question for you guys. You know, our nafs needs to be charged as well. You know, for example, if you have your phone, and those these days, especially younger kids, if you have your phone all day, and if it starts dying, you're having a heart attack. You need to make sure it's charged. You're gonna make sure if your phone died, you're gonna run to the charger, charge it right away. But do you realize that your soul is also dying? Your soul needs to be recharged. Do you rush the same way to prayer? Do you rush the same way to the masjid? Do you rush the same way to remembering Allah the way you do your phone? Realize this. Your soul also needs to be charged. This is how you charge when you come here. When you remember Allah, this is how you charge your soul. So remember this all the time, you know, brothers and sisters. Do not forget your priorities in this life and where to place your honor and where to seek your priorities. And because this life has a way of, you know, it's distracting you. And we cannot be distracted because then you lose vision of life and the end goal. And those who lose vision of the end goal, their path is always going to be wrong. You know, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, on the eve of Ashura, salawat, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. On the eve of Ashura, he says that, I do not know of any companions greater than mine, or any relatives greater than mine. And Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam was the man that personified all of the qualities I said today in speaking about the last 9 nights. You know, he's a man that created virtue and loyalty and honor. You know, Prophet Rasulullah, he says that for every good deed that you do, there's a better deed out there. And the best of deeds is the one who attains shuhada, the status of shuhada. But Imam Zain al-Din alayhi salam has said that while the martyrs have the highest positions, they're all envious of one person, Abu Fadl Abbas, for he has the highest status amongst the Shaheed. And Imam Bakr alayhi salam has said that no one had vision like Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam. He had penetrating vision. He knew what was right in this life, basira, wisdom. He never gave in to anything in this life. And this is exactly how we need to live. For example, because some companions lacked this vision. There was one companion that left Imam Hussein alayhi salam. His name was Dahak. Dahak said, "Oh Imam, I'll fight with you as long as there's a chance for me to help you." So when it came to the day of Ashura and Imam's companions were all martyred, he's like, "Imam, at this point, it doesn't look like I can benefit you at all. I'm going to leave you. I hope you understand." Imam, of course, he at that time wanted to, every excuse for everyone to leave. He would give everyone, he's so merciful. But he left him. Because the going got tough, he's like, "You know what, I'm benefitless." He didn't have vision of the greater picture. He didn't have that basira. This insight is important for us in this life. In this world, when you are lost, you have to understand what insight truly means. To have ma'rifah of the Imam's positions and the Imams themselves. So he left him. But Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, he's someone who no matter what happened in this life, he had this vision. And we have to train ourselves this way. Why? Because when a situation gets tough, if you haven't trained your soul, you might become like Dahak and leave. You don't know. We always say, "Ya laytana kunna ma'akum." We'll be there, we'll be there. You do not know that what's going to happen in that position unless you've been training yourself for that day. Right now, you say this now, but when that day comes and you see death in front of your eyes, most of the people, 90%, will run away. Because you haven't trained yourself for that moment. So this is why vision is important. This is why understanding all these principles that we've been talking about these last couple of nights is very important. So you train your soul and make it ready. That you can give your life for Imam any moment. And just serve your Imam any moment, obediently. Once when Hazrat Abbas was a child, and Imam Hussain alayhi salam, they were all younger, Imam Hussain alayhi salam had called out for water. And Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam ran, the first one to run. He came back and it was a picture, the water was spilling all over himself. And, since then, as you know, he called him master. He never called him brother. He always treated him like a master. On the day before Ashura, Shimmer, he called out, "Where are my nephews?" Because Hazrat Abbas was related to Shimmer. And they were related to other people inside the tribe through their mothers. So the Imam tells him, "Go to him, see what he's saying." The reason Imam Hussain let him go was to show the people what the basira of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam is. To show the people that he can be given the world, but he'll never, ever be distracted. So Shimmer says, "You can join me because you're related to us from the mother's side. You'll be given immunity. No matter what happens, we'll let you go." The reason why he was doing this? There's two reasons. One, he tried to buy him out. Second, because Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam was the greatest warrior in the army of Muhammad alayhi salam. That one warrior would have destroyed the entire army. He was scared to death. A poet says that they were scared to death of Abu Fadl, but even death fears Abu Fadl, for he is the son of Ali ibn Abu Talib alayhi salam. Abbas was the lion that other lions were scared of. They used to call him Sab al-Qantara, the lion of the bridge. Why? During the battle of Nahrawan, when the Khawarij were fighting Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam Ali alayhi salam had a battle strategy. He says, "We'll put the Khawarij in a landlocked area by a river, and there's only bridges to leave. And we'll put contingents on each bridge." He was a very mastermind when it comes to battle, Imam Ali alayhi salam. So on the first bridge, he puts Imam Hassan alayhi salam in an army. The second bridge, he puts Imam Hussain alayhi salam in an army. There was 4 bridges. On the third bridge, he puts Muhammad al-Hanafiya in an army. And on the fourth bridge, he puts Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam by himself. So when the Khawarij were fighting, Imam Ali alayhi salam was destroying them in battle. Left and right. They had no chance. He was Asad-ullah. So they started running away. They wanted to escape. They go to the first bridge, they see Imam Hassan alayhi salam and an army standing there. They turn away. They go to the second bridge, they see Imam Hussein and an army standing there. They turn away. They go to the third bridge, they see Muhammad Hanafiya, Hassan also says son, standing there with an army. They turn away. They go to the fourth bridge. They see a 15-year-old boy, Hazrat Abbas, standing there. They're like, let's go. This is the bridge to go through. History tells us not a single Khawarij made it past that bridge that night. This is why he was known as the Lion of the Bridge. Not a single Khawarij passed that bridge. That 15-year-old boy was the son of Ali and Abu Talib alayhi salam. He slaughtered them all. This was Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam. And this is why Shimr was calling out to him to join, to leave. Because they knew he could fight that day. They would all be done for. You know, the night before Ashura, Sayyidah Zainab approached Abbas. And she said to him, I wish to speak to you tonight. And she tells him the story of when he was born. Al-Baneen and Imam alayhi salam. Imam alayhi salam was holding him, and he was kissing his arms instead of his forehead. So Al-Baneen comes and